This is Michael Scott Hollash with the Reform Report, and today we have an exclusive three-part interview with former Bonanno gangster Frank Fiordilino. This is Frank's very first interview ever given, so we are super honored to be able to sit down with him and have him share his story and insight with us. If you are new to the channel and you are interested in the topic of organized crime, we have several of our previous interviews in our video library, as well as multiple interviews on our slate. So if you subscribe to the channel, hit the notification button, you will be notified as any future interviews are completed and released. So without further ado, here is part one with our interview with Frank Fiordilino. So I pulled some media files on you, Frank. I was reading that it stated that you were born in Sicily. Is that correct?
That's correct. I was born in Castello Mario Golfo.
Mm-hmm.
In 1970, we immigrated to this country. My family did in 72.
I know you said that you were over here, that you were, or you are cousins with Dino Calabro, but your family over in Sicily, were they involved in organized crime over there?
We were.
Okay.
I had family here that immigrated much earlier than I did in the 50s. I had an uncle on my father's side who happened to be a captain in the Bonanno family during the 50s and 60s. And I had another uncle on my mother's side
Mm-hmm.
that also passed away more recently than my father's brother. And he was a soldier also in the Bonanno family. But I also had a godfather who just passed away last year that also was a member. And I have a couple of cousins today that are still in the family.
Okay, so pretty much for the...
In the crime family. Yeah.
Right. So for the most part, your family has predominantly been associated with and mostly associated with the Bonanno family too, for the most part.
Right, and that all stems from Joe Bonanno himself and the town I come from. The town I come from is a Bonanno stronghold. It's where Joe Bonanno himself came from and immigrated to the United States. You know, we all know each other. It's a fraternity. The town has been always a fraternity.
Today, is that a pretty big town or city over there?
No. My town today is probably 14,000. It's about 14,000 people, but a lot of people were either exiled, jailed, or immigrated to the United States, and that's how we came up with the American mob.
Okay, very interesting. You know, it's interesting because when, you know, in at least in my research, historically, it seems that, you know, Sicilians are not very flashy people, where the Italians are definitely kind of more, you know, wear it on their sleeves in a way, you know, and I kind of make...
With the street.
Yeah, you know, because I make the... you know, the comparison down here in Tampa, Santos Trafficante was our big crime boss, and he was also Sicilian. You know, it's very interesting the amount of power that guy had, and the way that he lived, he conducted himself. It was, you know, the absolute utter opposite of a John Gotti, you know.
Well, yeah, and more like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but more like an Al Capone, you know, when you compare John Gotti, and that's, I think, maybe the Neapolitan way, which is a little bit more flashier, you know?
Right.
They both were Neapolitans.
Right.
But back to what you were saying, as far as the Sicilians go, in the beginning of Cosa Nostra in this country, when the whole five families came together, most of the members were Sicilian. It was later on with the people weren't immigrating as much.
Right.
Organized crime resurfaced in Italy in '43 after Mussolini was gone. And what happened was they started taking in new members, and with the new members, some were Americanized, and the Sicilians, yes, we do different things. The Sicilians that were in America, I'm taking a page, I guess, out of Joe Bonanno himself. and he basically, yeah, he had it right. He says the Americans are more flashy, the Sicilians are more deceitful
Right.
in a lot of ways, and discreet at the same time. But we don't bother the average Joe Smo. It's among, the guy who goes to work every day, the taxpayer. It's among our inner circles that we tend to stay. You know what I mean? Where here comes John Gotti mania, and he's all over the board. Everything we're trying to fucking hide or not disclose or keep to ourselves, he's saying, well, here it is. You know,
Right.
not to take it away from you know what I mean? So.
Right. Well, like y'all obviously had an edict, like a parameter of rules that obviously, that everybody, stayed within the parameter of those rules, and where somebody like John Gotti, like you said, was more in the mold of an Al Capone. Unfortunately for Gotti, the government progressed and laws adapted, and you can't conduct yourself that way and expect to stay free. It just doesn't happen anymore.
Right. I mean, it didn't work for Capone, and that was 50 years before. I mean, well, why would it have been different for him?
Right, absolutely, and especially after they, molded the RICO Act, enacted the RICO laws and everything. It's like now everything is stacked against you. It's hard for a guy who is even of the utmost discretion of conducting in the shadows, but much less somebody is going to throw it in the face of the government. So at what point in your life, obviously it was already in your family, so you grew up around it, but when did you or how did you start getting involved in organized crime in New York?
My first job, I was 13, 14. I worked for my brother in a coffee shop in Bushwick, Brooklyn. And Bushwick, Brooklyn was a big Bonanno stronghold. It was back in the 80s and 90s. And even going back to the 30s. Joe Bonanno himself lived at one time in Bushwick.
Okay.
So we had a coffee shop. My older brother, he's 11 years senior than I am. He had a coffee shop, and that's where I came in touch with organized crime, I guess, in an outside, you know what I mean? At home, I always knew it was around.
Right.
We didn't talk about it. But there were certain things we didn't do that the average person did, and we did it. It was like being It was like being Amish, you know what I mean? Or freaking or a cult. I remember Bushwick, my house getting robbed. So the cop passed by. I think I told one of the younger kids, they were like 8, 9, at my house had gotten robbed. The patrol cop passes by. Kid goes, hey, well, his house has got robbed. So the cop stops and he goes, hey, what happened? And before I know, my brother looks at me, he goes, come in here. Because, he waits back to being deceitful. He waits to the cop, how you doing? Nah, everything's okay. Cop goes, okay. I'm going up the stairs because we lived on the second floor, and I feel this fucking boot right up my ass, you know what I mean? And he goes, don't talk to cops. We don't care what anybody does. That's their business. But in our house, that's just the way it is. So right there and then, there were certain things I just didn't do. My uncle always sat at the head of the table when he came over. That was my mother's brother. And there was an aura around him that, that just smelled organized crime, even at a young age. And I never seen him without a suit in his life,
Oh, okay. So he was like the old style, like the fedora and the suits and stuff.
Without it. Right. He was, and that was flashy because there was one guy that used to come in, an older guy in the 80s, 84. He had an old, what looked like a North Face jacket today with the same fedora every day.
Right.
Coffee with a sweet and low, and I was told, hey, whenever he comes in, you don't make sure, everything's on us. That's Uncle Joe, and then you just take care of Uncle Joe. Uncle Joe happened to be the third guy in the Bonanno family. It looked like he just came off the street. I felt like giving him $1. So that's the kind of mob I grew up with.
Right.
The younger generation got a little flashier, the ones you hear about the 1980s
was it that was the underboss under Joe Messina? Was that Sal Vitale?
Yeah.
Okay. He's always seemed like he was a stylish looking dude. You know, all
And
the
he never
pictures.
was.
Okay.
And he never was until like the see what happened was Joe went to prison around '86 in the Donnie Brasco case. So Sal was his right hand man. It's also his brother-in-law. Joe married his sister.
Okay.
So I had more contact with Sal as far as seeing him around and all that. Not business-wise and nothing like that. A lot older than me, and I was just coming of age, and he was a little older. But he started hanging out a lot with the Gottis and that whole crew.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, he started wearing his hair like that. His metamorphosis that was growing. He was going into becoming it. And that's what eventually got him in trouble with his brother-in-law when he shelved him. He wasn't being cool with his own people. He was going into a wannabe John Gotti. There's only one John Gotti. You can talk bad or good about him. There was only one. People can talk all they want now, but a lot of people kissing his ass also.
One thing I'll say about John Gotti Sr. is that the guy, and I know a lot of people that have told me that he was a degenerate gambler and he, his faults and this and that. However, he must have had a lot of luck on his side because he sure dodged a lot of, suspected plots on his life. And so, the guy definitely had a sixth sense. He knew how to insulate himself. So obviously he was good at surviving for sure. Obviously that going way back, after Joe Bonanno, did his son Bill, he kind of ran the family briefly, didn't he?
That was in the 60s.
Right, late 60s.
I think they got chased around 68. I was born in the 70s.
Okay, right. So that was definitely before.
This is all secondhand. As far as Bill Bonanno, he was just his father's son. Didn't hear much about him, no.
Right, and then obviously Carmine Gallant was an associate or obviously he was a soldier under Joe Bonanno, so he definitely was. Yeah. Okay. So and so his deal, and so correct me if I'm wrong. He went to prison for a substantial amount of time, which I'm assuming was on narcotics. And this
something to the effect of 3/4 of his life.
Right.
Narcotics was his thing.
And so at the point,
he was a tough motherfucker. He was a bastard. He was one of the toughest guys on the street.
Right.
He just took his family's own. His dad came from my town also, so he was very, very loyal to his custodians.
At the time that he got hit, was it because he was making a power play to take over the family? Was that one of the main reasons that they took?
The thing about that is there was three custodians on that hit also, and they just had enough of him, and the commission was like, this guy doesn't want to listen to nobody. He was threatening bosses. He was just becoming a nuisance.
So
that's that famous hit in '79, which is actually 2 blocks away from where my brothers owned the coffee shop.
That cafe where
Bushwick.
Okay, so that what was that? Joe and Mary's restaurant? Is that what that
Joe
was?
and Mary's, yeah.
Right.